Viridian, the Green Guide by My Head in the Clouds Not Coming Down. A Boku no Hero Academia fanfic. Chapter 36. Berserk. Are you sure? Tsukauchi gripped the test results so tightly the paper wrinkled. There was absolutely no trigger in his system when he was brought in. We checked 3 times. One of the doctors confirmed, adjusting her glasses. And even if there had been, it would have been long since metabolized by now. If he was like the other next-level villains you've brought in before, he would have calmed down shortly after he was brought in. Whatever made him like this, it wasn't just trigger. Shoto looked through the glass of the cell at who used to be Jun Hamasaki. The doctors were right. He worked with next-level villains before, and aside from a few unfortunate cosmetic changes, once the trigger was out of their system, they returned to who they had been before. But Hamasaki, it had been days, and the uncontrollable rage he displayed when he was arrested had only gotten worse. It was going to make him extremely difficult to interrogate, which is why they had been waiting for the effects of the drug to wear off, like they always done in the past. But, difficult or not, they had to try. If for no other reason than to make sure the monsters that did this to him were brought to justice. There's something else, the doctor said. With the police department's permission, we were able to run a whole slew of tests to try to figure out what these people did to his body. The physical changes are similar to what we've seen from the villain factory before, but the brain scans. She trailed off, and Shoto turned to the team of doctors, gesturing for them to continue. After a moment, one of the other doctors continued where the first had laid off. The only area in his brain that was functioning at anywhere near normal levels was the amygdala, the area that is responsible for emotions such as fear and anger. It's no wonder that he tore up the city the way he did, considering that it's almost as if his brain had been rewired to optimize rage. When I arrived at the scene, Tenshin said Hamasaki had gone completely berserk. Shoto said, "We thought it had been some sort of trigger, but you think that was biological?" The head doctor nodded. Absolutely. The other areas of his brain has started to atrophy at a much higher rate than we'd normally expect, almost as if his body was attacking itself. Right now, the only conscious thought he can even process are those that are boosted by anger. But from the way his brain is decaying, even those might disappear in the coming weeks. Then there's no point in waiting any longer, Tsukauchi said finally. If we are going to have any chance of getting any information out of him, it's gonna have to be now. The doctors looked hesitant, and, honestly, Shoto felt the same way. Hamasaki may have been restrained and mildly sedated, but they were in uncharted territory when it came to his body and his quirk. Whatever the villain factory had done to him, it had made him stronger than he had any right to be, which made him unpredictable, which made him more dangerous than ever, because of his uncontrolled rage. But Tsukauchi was right. It would be entirely illogical to wait any longer to interrogate him. He wouldn't get any less angry if they waited, and they might miss their chance if his brain atrophied any further. It didn't mean that it was safe, or that Shoto had to like it. Tsukauchi gestured for the doctors to open the door, and Shoto followed him inside. The moment Hamasaki caught sight of them, he started fighting against his restraints, practically growling as he lunged at them. This is why he didn't understand why some of his students enjoyed horror movies so much. Real life was so much scarier. Jun Hamasaki, my name is Detective Tsukauchi, and this is Pro Hero Eraserhead, Tsukauchi said, feigning calmness and hiding the slight tremor in his voice behind a thick layer of professionalism. We've met before. My quirk, lie detector, will be active during the course of this interview. Die! Well, at least he was still capable of coherent speech, though Shoto wished his first understandable words had been something a little more useful. Do you know who did this to you? Hamasaki growled. Kill everyone! Tsukauchi wrote something down. Did they threaten to kill you? Kill! Hamasaki lunged at them. Kill! Destroy! Everything hurt me! I hurt everything! Everything? Why didn't he say everyone? If it were Shota, he would want to hurt everyone that hurt him. But attacking everything went beyond simple revenge, didn't it? He glanced at Tsukauchi, who looked equally confused. Shoto thought for a moment, watching the way Hamasaki fought against the restraints. When the next level villains recovered, none of them remembered the experimentations, the leading theory that it was trauma. But the next one was that the villain factory had someone with memory manipulation quirk. If Hamasaki couldn't remember who it was that hurt him, he might lash out at everything. Or they might have conditioned him to turn his anger to other targets. Did they tell you to be angry at the world? Shota asked. Did the people you were with make you believe that everyone else hurt you, not them? Everything hurt me, Hamasaki yelled. Sensei said so. Sensei don't lie. Tsukauchi scribbled something else. Sensei? That's the one that hurt you. Do you know his name? Hamasaki shook. Sensei helped me. Sensei helped me kill you. Shoto glared down at him. Who is Sensei? Kill! Hamasaki lunged again, and Tsukauchi and Shoto had to take a step back as one of his wrist restraints finally snapped under the continuous pressure. He continued struggling, apparently too far gone to think to use his free hand to undo the other bonds. But Shoto didn't want to be around by the time he figured that out. Get out of there! The head doctor slammed the door open and gestured for them as she yelled to her team. Prep the air filtration system for tranquilizer. Shota and Tsukauchi ran from the room, and the head doctor locked the door behind him. Shota looked through the window just in time to see a cloud of gas flood the room. Hamasaki fought even harder, managing to snap another restraint before the tranquilizer took effect. His fighting grew weaker for a few minutes before he finally slumped down on the bed unconscious, prompting everyone outside to breathe a sigh of relief. Sensei, do you think that's the symbol of evil he mentioned before disappearing from custody? Tsukauchi swallowed. I don't know. But why would he be so loyal to the person who hurt him? The pain of being experimented on combined with whatever memory eraser they're using would have made him extremely susceptible, Shoto said. They've effectively brainwashed him into being loyal to them. Tsukauchi gave a frustrated sigh. Which makes things even more complicated, doesn't it? They were interrupted as Tsukauchi's phone rang. He took one look at the caller ID and answered. Hello, Chief Tsurogami. You are on speaker with me and Eraser. How are things going with the next level villain that Ignium apprehended? The chief asked. Have you gotten any useful information from him? Woof. Tsukauchi and Shoto shared a look. It might have been just a theory, but Viridian had been right, that the villain factory might be moving on to the next phase of their experiments, because Hamasaki was definitely not an instant villain. Not much, Tsukauchi said finally. He mentioned a person named Sensei, but Eraser believes he's been brainwashed into being loyal to him. Most of what he said was just threats. He's not back to normal, woof? Shirogami asked. It's been days. Shouldn't the trigger be out of his system by now, like with the others? That's the problem. He's not like the others. Shoto sighed. Hamasaki represents the next phase of the villain factory's experiments. He's not a next-level villain, and according to the doctors, he most likely won't be recovering like they did. There was a long beat of silence on the other end, as Tsurogami processed the new information. Woof. If he is not the next-level villain, what is he? Shoto looked at Tsukauchi. They needed some name for this next evolution, because Shoto wasn't naive enough to think there wouldn't be others. But what to call them? This next phase was defined by the sheer amount of anger and rage they displayed. So, something with that? Like Ignium had said, Hamasaki had gone completely berserk from the experiments. He's something else entirely, Shoto said finally. He's a berserker.